Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
In the air, Yubei didn't really give up on resisting as he watched the metallic planet's arm swing towards him. "Bullet time," he shouted in a low voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the arms that were coming at him seemed to immediately stop. Everything in the surroundings became silent. This ability is really useful. After sighing with emotion, Yubei immediately performed a spatial jump and jumped out of the mechanical god's attack range. Even he didn't dare to use his body to take the attack head-on. Instead, he chose to dodge it. At the same time, he had plenty of time to dodge. Yubei couldn't help but continue calling out to the system in his mind. End quote. "System, we are both level 15 creatures, but the energy storage in this guy's body is much stronger than mine. What is going on?" Yubei asked, although he already had a vague answer in his heart. However, the system quickly replied, "That's normal. In a sense, the strength of a creature depends on the energy storage in the body. Even the same creature can be strong and weak, not to mention different creatures. Host, don't forget, how much time has passed since you became a python? This biological mechanical god from a high-tier universe is millions of years old. It would be strange if he is weaker than you in terms of size and strength." The system's explanation left Yubei speechless for a moment. What it said made too much sense. Forget it. So what if he's powerful? I'm much more capable than him. Yubei shook his head, too lazy to ask further. After his body teleported to a safe position, his eyes were filled with excitement when he looked at the mechanical god. Yes, it was excitement. The mechanical god had been accumulating energy for millions of years, and his entire body was made of boundless energy. Although this energy was extremely violent now, if it could all be devoured, Yubei couldn't even imagine how much his strength would increase by then. So, at this moment, Yubei had already subconsciously treated the mechanical god as his own food. After he activated bullet time, in reality, only Yubei's speed had changed. Everything else remained the same. At this moment, the mechanical god did not realize that something was wrong. In his opinion, even if Yubei were to hide in the spatial fragments, it would be useless. If he increased his speed to his maximum, he would be affected even if he was millions of meters away. "You're dead," he continued to roar. But just as the arm was about to swing down, he watched helplessly as Yubei, who hadn't tried to dodge at all, disappeared into thin air. Yes, he couldn't even see Yubei within a radius of 1 million meters. She couldn't even find a trace of Yubei in the surrounding spatial fragments. There was only one explanation for this situation, and that was that Yubei had dodged millions of meters away in that instant. "Who?" Crack, crack. He waved his arm. It brought with it a terrifying cosmic storm. Then, the space that was already a black hole shattered once again. End quote. "How is it possible to escape under my eyes?" The mechanical god could not help but say. At this time, the mutated beasts hiding in the space debris were all extremely excited. "King, he wasn't hit." End quote. If I'm not mistaken, King used bullet time. This ability is invincible in itself. It can freeze space. End quote. Don't tease me. The concept of bullet time isn't to freeze space, but to increase one's own speed, so that one's speed is faster than the surrounding speed by millions of times, thus creating the illusion of time freezing. Then, where's the king now? The mutated beasts continued to discuss. At that moment, Yubei's eyes were cold. 1 million meters away, his eyes were wide open. He had clearly felt the power of the mechanical god's attack just now. If he had been hit by that giant arm, he would have died. The mechanical god was really determined to kill him. End quote. "System, with my current body, can I directly hit him?" he asked coldly. "It can last for 10 seconds. The temperature of his body is several times that of a star. It can melt everything. This is not easy." Yubei's eyes narrowed, and he was secretly thinking of other ways. However, Yubei's eyes quickly lit up again. "System, are the genes of the mechanical god different from those of the ordinary machine race? If I were to devour the painting of a part of his body, I would be able to immediately increase my strength and complete my evolution. It will be much easier to deal with him." "This is fine." The system finally admitted it. "All right." Yubei nodded. Chi chi chi. In the next moment, Yi Bei's body suddenly expanded in the air, reaching 10,000 meters. Machine God. Actually, I'm not that interested in knowing your name. Because from today onwards, you will no longer exist in this world. And NBSB, whoosh. After his body grew in size, Yi Bei's mental power domain spread out. In fact, the moment he said that, the mechanical god had also discovered Yi Bei's location. However, the mechanical god was quite disdainful when he heard this. It's not easy for you to evolve to level 15 in a low-tier universe. However, the difference in our energy reserves is too great. So what if you manage to avoid it by chance? That was just a casual attack. The mechanical god said. Then, something magical happened. His huge body disappeared into thin air, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Yi Bei. And quote, I have unlimited energy. And you? How long can you escape? If I really can't kill you, I'll just destroy the entire universe. In short, I'll kill you today. Who? As he spoke, his body was filled with killing intent. The boiling metal lava forcibly ignited countless space fragments. Is that so? However, in the face of the mechanical god, not only was Yi Bei not afraid, he even asked coldly. This sound stunned the mechanical god, and his eyes became even angrier. Go to hell. He roared again. This time, the mechanical god did not just use his arms. Its huge body was extremely agile, and it actually pounced towards Yi Bei. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. His body was simply too large, and this action brought about a cosmic storm. For a moment, Yi Bei even had the illusion that the entire universe would collapse because of this power. But, in the face of such an attack, Yi Bei didn't use the power of bullet time. His body had grown to 10,000 meters. He was really going to fight back. In the lower universe, in the metal star field, all the planets here exploded at almost the same time. Boom, boom, boom. When those planets exploded, they all bloomed with dazzling flames. In a moment, the entire star field seemed to be set off by the most dazzling fireworks, so beautiful that it was suffocating. The mutated beasts that were hiding in the space debris widened their eyes when they saw this scene. It's too terrifying. All the planets in the entire galaxy are exploding on their own. How much energy is generated? What kind of method was this? Our snake tribe civilization can't do that. End quote. The energy from the explosions of the planets seems to be gathering. End quote. End quote. Be careful, everyone. An explosion of this level will destroy the space debris. Don't be affected by it. Quick, stay away from places with planets. The further the better. End quote. Yes. In the space fragment, the mutated beasts quickly moved. As for the centaurs, Caesar and the apostles saw the situation and analyzed it immediately. Morpheus, those planets all exploded at the same time. What do you think? Caesar first asked Morpheus. Morpheus reacted quickly and quote, the metal life form should be a true life form of the machinery race. The mechanical life form that came to the Centaur constellation before was just a clone that he controlled. Even those planets were the resources that he had stored over countless years. Look, when these planets exploded, the matter didn't actually disappear. Instead, it turned into particles and moved rapidly in the universe. Those particles will continuously supply the mechanical life form with a huge amount of energy. The apostles were stunned. Then, Caesar's eyes widened again. End quote. You mean, the explosion of those planets was just to send a huge amount of energy to the mechanical life form? If this continues, not only will the life form have unlimited energy, but it will also become stronger and stronger. Yes, that's it. Morpheus nodded. Golden Lion growled. Damn it, what should we do? From the looks of it, although the king isn't weak, the mechanical life form has endless energy and can continue to grow stronger. It won't be easy to fight. Yeah, why don't we go over as well? The Blood Moon spoke. The Ant Queen said, the number of our Ant Tribe's army is no less than that of the Machine Tribe's army. Let's go together and cover that fellow. No matter how strong he is, he can't stop us from devouring him endlessly. End quote. This is a good idea. Gu Yu agreed. But, at this time, Wang Wen said without any politeness, if the king is really in trouble, he'll definitely look for us. But the king hasn't said anything yet. All we need to do is wait patiently. Don't forget that the king still has a terrifying warship that has not been used. You all know how powerful that warship is, right? Who? The apostles in the building took a deep breath. Yes, they were worrying too much. Yibei hadn't even used his true power yet. All right, let's continue watching. Just wait patiently. Soon, everyone reached an agreement. In the void of the metal star field, Yibei's mental power domain spread throughout the entire space. He had already noticed it when the countless planets exploded together. At the same time, after the planets exploded, they turned into an endless source of power, gathering toward the mechanical god. But in this situation, Yibei wasn't just at a disadvantage. At this moment, he could feel the energy in his surroundings becoming incomparably dense. With every breath he took, he was constantly absorbing the boundless energy, even though he was entrenched here. With so much energy, no matter how serious his injuries were, Yibei would immediately recover. Asterisk whoosh asterisk. When the mechanical god pounced at Yibei, he did not dodge. As his body absorbed energy like crazy, he charged toward the mechanical god without any hesitation. You idiot! The mechanical god roared. Right now, his body was burning with a terrifying amount of metal liquid. If Yibei took the initiative to approach him, wouldn't he be courting death? Uffed. As soon as he finished speaking, his huge body slammed into Yibei in the air. The moment they collided, the mechanical god was overjoyed and felt that he would definitely win. However, the next second, he was stunned. He felt as if Yibei had bitten his stomach. And then, Yibei disappeared into thin air again. What's going on? The mechanical god was extremely confused. And 1,000,000 meters away, Yibei's body was curled up, and his skin turned red from the scorching flames. However, his eyes were filled with endless excitement. He had just bitten off a piece of meat from the mechanical god's body and used bullet time to escape. After 1,000,000 meters, the system's voice immediately rang out in Yibei's mind. End quote. Congratulations to user for successfully devouring a real mechanical life form. You have gained the ability to resist the scorching hot metal lava. If the host can completely devour this mechanical life form, you will obtain the authority to open a higher universe. Yes, this was what really made Yibei excited. As long as he devoured the mechanical god, he would be able to open this low-tier universe. From the looks of it, the strongest person in the lower-level universe, other than himself, was the mechanical god in front of him. No matter what, they had to win this battle. At this thought, Yibei's eyes shone with an even stronger will to fight. On the other hand, the mechanical god, who had finally regained his senses, was nourished by the endless energy, and his body recovered in an instant. At the same time, his mental power immediately locked onto Yibei's position. After that, his body disappeared into thin air, and in the blink of an eye, he reappeared in front of Yibei. You have the ability to teleport at any time, and you don't even need to tear space apart. It's comparable to the teleportation of a high-grade life form. This time, the mechanical god appeared in front of Yibei. He did not attack him directly. Instead, he glared at him and asked in a hoarse voice, "Teleportation? Higher life form." However, when Yibei heard this, his attention was completely focused on a different place. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. He still didn't know what teleportation was. However, the information revealed by the mechanical god was a little too much. In the high-tier universe, there was actually a creature that could teleport. With a thought, it could appear millions of meters away. Yibei was looking forward to seeing this ability. You can think whatever you want. But, mechanical god, you taste really good. End quote. Now, the flames on your body won't hurt me in any way. End quote. Yibei said coldly, a murderous look in his eyes. In the air, the mechanical god's huge body looked down at Yibei from above, his eyes spewing fire. He was very fast. He was also very strong. The endless flames on his body were the natural enemy of all carbon-based life forms. But now, the flood dragon in front of him said that flames were useless? Useless? End quote. Then don't you dare dodge, end quote. The mechanical god roared. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and swung it in Yibei's direction. And when Yibei saw this huge arm, he really didn't intend to dodge it. Roar. He let out a low roar. Yi-Bei opened his mouth wide and prepared to continue devouring. The mechanical god was too big, but Yi-Bei wasn't afraid. He could devour it endlessly. As long as this continued, he would eventually devour the entire mechanical god one day. Boom, boom. There was a muffled sound. The mechanical god had indeed hit Yi-Bei, but Yi-Bei was not injured at all. Instead, he had bitten off another piece of flesh. Again, the mechanical god roared. Bang, bang, bang. Boom, boom, boom. The metal star field and the universe seemed to have become a black hole. Even the black hole was being swept away by the violent energy, and it showed signs of collapsing at every moment. The mutated beasts in the space debris were all dumbfounded. End quote. King, we're going to win. That mechanical life form can no longer cause any harm to King. On the contrary, with every collision, King is able to devour a part of his body. Although that part is nothing to a mechanical life form, if it accumulates over time, the mechanical life form will definitely be completely devoured. End quote. A highly intelligent mutated beast said. Right? I think so too. End quote. I'm really looking forward to the day the king devours that guy. At that time, how strong will the king be? We should leave this star field as soon as possible. There are black holes everywhere, and it will collapse at any time. N. The creatures in the space debris were already preparing to retreat. The nervous apostles in the Centaur constellation calmed down after observing the battle. End quote. This battle will probably go on for a long time. Everyone, let's continue to devour resources in other star fields. End quote. Caesar said. When Yi-Bei and the mechanical god started fighting, almost all the creatures in the snake civilization stopped devouring and watched the battle. If they continued to fight, it would definitely waste a lot of the snake civilization's time. Caesar's statement was immediately acknowledged by many mutated beasts. Therefore, the apostles spread the news at once. In an instant, the snake civilization avoided the metal star field and began to devour other star systems. Time passed by quietly. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. This universe crystal fragment was actually not destroyed in a high-tier universe. It was lucky that it was still in good condition. And in this 1 month, in the metal star field, Yi-Bei and the mechanical god had clashed more than 1 trillion times. The battle went on for 30 days and 30 nights. Countless planets in the universe exploded, and the violent energy was constantly surging toward the core of the battle. As time passed, Yi-Bei and the mechanical god showed no signs of fatigue. Instead, their strength had increased by dozens of times. The more you fight, the stronger you get. You bastard, I don't believe I can't kill you. The roars of the mechanical god did not stop for the past 30 days. As for Yi-Bei, as the battle dragged on, his performance became more and more relaxed. The more flesh Yi-Bei devoured from the mechanical god, the more abilities he gained. In the end, not only were the mechanical god's attacks unable to hurt Yi-Bei, but they were also unable to even leave a mark on his body. However, the mechanical god, who was already in a frenzy, did not notice anything. The battle continued. On the 40th day, the situation finally changed drastically. After Yi-Bei devoured too many machines, he had already surpassed the mechanical god in terms of energy storage. The mechanical god finally realized that something was wrong. How did you do it? Why do you keep getting stronger? Now, you're actually going to surpass me. The mechanical god's voice actually began to carry a hint of fear. But Yi-Bei didn't intend to answer her at all. After playing for more than 40 days, he was already starting to get sick of it. His killing intent surged. How is it? Mechanical god, I'll give you one last chance. Submit to us, the snake race, or die. In your dreams. As a member of the automaton race of the high-tier universe, coming to a low-tier universe was a very humiliating thing. Now, he was actually threatened by a creature that had evolved from a low-tier universe. Even if he died, he would not accept this. As soon as he finished speaking, the mechanical god once again charged at Yi-Bei. Let's end the battle quickly. Yi-Bei no longer hesitated. Roar. He roared. The length of his body had already increased to 100,000 meters. Although it was still pitifully small in front of the mechanical god, its aura was extremely powerful. At that moment, the mechanical god felt a sense of uneasiness that he had never felt before. This was the instinct of any living creature. However, this was not a reason for him to retreat. The next moment, he charged towards Yi Bei without any hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. In the universe, the intense collision began again. But this time, an accident happened. After more than 10 collisions, Yi Bei's body wrapped itself around the mechanical god's arm without any hesitation. He wrapped himself tightly around the arm, ignoring the hot metal liquid. He opened his mouth and swallowed the metal liquid, one mouthful after another. Get lost. Get lost. After being entangled, the mechanical god roared in anger, and his two arms collided with each other. The terrifying power exploded in the metal star field. The endless black hole began to distort. He punched Yi Bei's body repeatedly. But Yi Bei, who was wrapped around it, didn't react at all, as if he didn't care about the damage at all. Crack, crack, crack. Instead, it opened its mouth wide and started devouring without restraint. Its huge body opened its mouth wide, and with every bite, it was able to bite off a large piece of meat. The speed at which it devoured was also extremely fast. As it continued to devour, the energy in Yi Bei's body increased at an unbelievable speed. Time continued to pass. After the 50th day, read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Yi Bei didn't even know how much power he had devoured and transformed. The mechanical god's body, which had been relying on the metal universe to continuously replenish its energy, finally stopped. With every mouthful Yi Bei took, his body began to weaken. At the same time, the mechanical god was also very clear that if this continued, he might really be completely devoured. This small fellow in front of him was clearly his nemesis, centaurs. While the mutated beasts of the snake tribe civilization were observing the battle, the three-bodied creatures were doing the same. He watched as the mechanical god and Yi Bei fought in the void for 50 days. When they saw the originally bright metal star field, it had completely turned into a black hole, constantly devouring everything in the surrounding star field. These three-body life forms were all trembling. They were terrified to the extreme. He's so strong. There were characters jumping around the three-body life form, forming two words. End quote. I can't believe we actually wanted to breed such creatures before. If this continues, we might really be able to break through this low-tier universe. End quote. Immediately, another three-body being answered. End quote. Yes, to be honest, I'm really looking forward to what the so-called high-level universe looks like. End quote. At this moment, almost all of the three-body life forms were certain that Yi Bei had won. As for the snake civilization, by the time the battle started, all of the snake tribe creatures had already entered a period of devouring. Although they hadn't reached the edge of this universe, they were already faintly touching it. In addition, with the continuous devouring and the improvement of space technology, the mutated beasts of the snake tribe civilization had an incredible amount of energy source on them. Their bodies had also evolved to a terrifying extent. Compared to 50 days ago, the snake tribe civilization's overall creature level had all risen by a stage. In the centaurs, this place was temporarily the foundation of the snake race civilization. Endless resources were abundant here, and the infrastructure was perfect to the extreme. Compared to the miserable state of the other universes that had been destroyed, this was like heaven. At every moment, there were countless mutated beasts of different forms shuttling through the star field. They were very harmonious, and there were no conflicts of resources, much less any conflicts. During this period of time, Caesar, on the other hand, had been standing in front of the 3D holographic projection, observing the battle in the metal star field. When Caesar saw that Yi Bei's number of devouring attempts had increased, and that the metal mechanical life form was finally beginning to weaken, Caesar knew very well that this battle was gradually coming to an end. After this, the king's strength will probably increase by a lot. If I'm not wrong, it's about time to break through the limit of the low-tier universe. Although the snake race civilization has a lot of resources, creature level, and number, and they have reached the peak in this universe, in the real high-tier universe, it's still not enough. With victory in sight, Caesar muttered to himself. He had once thought that as long as he could control this universe, he would be completely invincible. However, the more he knew, the more he understood that this universe was nothing more than a cage. There was a whole new world beyond this. No matter how strong he was in this world, he was nothing in that world. If they wanted to occupy a position in the high-tier universe, they had to develop the army of the snake race civilization to become stronger. Metal Star Field. No. As the battle continued for more than 50 days, the name of the place could be completely changed. There were no more metal planets in this star field. There was not even a single trace of metal in the air. The entire star field had become a huge black hole. Moreover, this black hole was not an ordinary black hole. At every moment, an extremely terrifying black hole storm was surging inside, capable of devouring everything. Yi Bei and the mechanical god were fighting madly in this black hole. However, from the arrogant and crazy appearance of the mechanical god in the beginning, the situation had changed greatly. And quote, "Flood Dragon God, let me go? I agree to join the snake race civilization and become one of them. My body contains a large number of high-grade universe crystals. Those crystals can freely control metal. With a thought, I can create an endless metal army." End quote. The mechanical god couldn't get Yi Bei off his arm, and after his body had transformed to the size of the earth, he finally knew what fear was, and he began to plead. No need. However, after hearing this, Yi Bei rejected her without any hesitation. Joining only now? I'm afraid it's too late. The system had said that as long as he completely devoured the mechanical god, Yi Bei could break through the barrier of the universe on his own. Now, to Yi Bei, the mechanical god was merely food. But of course, there was another possibility. After devouring the tinder in the mechanical god's body, Yi Bei's infinite devouring ability could completely transform it. At that time, Yi Bei would also have some of the techniques that belonged to mechanical lives. As long as Yi Bei wanted to, he could easily produce a large army of mechanical lives. Is there really no room for discussion? I can help you break through the barrier of this low-tier universe. As long as we work together, we can definitely do it. I can guarantee. The mechanical god continued. I can open it myself. End quote. I know many secrets of the high-tier universes. I know the true strength of the automaton race, as well as the flood dragon race, the dragon race, and even the insect race. I can tell you all of that information. End quote. When I devour you, I'll be able to obtain that information too. Yi Bei was completely unmoved. As he replied to her via his mental power, he continued to devour her. All methods and proposals were rejected. The mechanical god was in complete despair. Damn you, bastard, you're forcing me. End quote. Since I have already failed, I will self-destruct completely. I would like to see what you can do. End quote. The mechanical god roared. Crack, crack. The moment his voice fell, his huge body actually cracked. Terrifying cracks appeared on it. At that moment, Yi Bei could even clearly see a crystal-clear tinder appearing at the core of his body. It contained the core energy of the mechanical god. However, the moment his body split open, countless cracks also appeared on the crystal tinder, and it was about to turn into powder at any time. You want to self-destruct? Let's see if you still have the ability to. Yi Bei's body was boiling with killing intent. Bullet time. At the same time, he activated bullet time without hesitation. The mechanical god, who was about to self-destruct, and the violent black hole star field, everything was in a state of stillness. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Asterisk whoosh, asterisk. As for Yi Bei, his huge body turned into a shadow, and the speed at which he devoured the demonic beasts instantly increased by hundreds of millions of times. At the moment of the explosion, the mechanical god's body seemed to have been reduced by half in the endless black hole. And at this moment, Yi Bei's body began to evolve once again. Crack, crack. In the metal starfield, when the mechanical god exploded, Yi Bei activated bullet time. Then, he started to devour it as fast as he could. First, his body rushed in and devoured the Allspark. Then, he would devour the entire body of the mechanical god. However, after he had only devoured half of it, the system's voice rang out in his mind again. End quote. Congratulations to the host for successfully devouring a super creature, a level 15 life form. The host's physical strength has been increased and will evolve into the top genetic level among WIRMS. The Golden Worm Dragon. End quote. Yes, the system's words were quite abrupt. But when Yi-Bei heard this, he was extremely shocked. Back when he devoured the worm dragon, he had already completed the worm dragon evolution. Now, there's a golden flood dragon? However, as long as he could become stronger, Yi-Bei had no reason to refuse. Let's put aside the matter of evolution. I'll talk about it after I've devoured this guy. Yi-Bei's devouring continued. On the other hand, Caesar and the other apostles in the Centaur constellation saw a completely different situation. The battle had reached its most intense moment, but the mechanical god suddenly self-destructed. However, all of a sudden, the huge body of the mechanical god started to disappear at an unbelievable speed, as if those bodies were being cut into pieces. As Yi-Bei's speed was too fast, the camera couldn't capture him at all. He had already disappeared into the black hole. 1 second. Yes, only a second had passed. The mechanical god, which was the size of Earth, was actually devoured by Yi-Bei at the last moment. After he finished devouring, Yi-Bei's body was suspended in the black hole. The aura he exuded was terrifyingly powerful. End quote. This mechanical god is not bad. I can feel that the energy in my body is almost endless. And the Allspark has also fused with my body. With a thought, any metal can be transformed into mechanical life, and at the same time, it will give them unprecedented intelligence. End quote. Yi-Bei opened his mouth and said softly. But of course, at that moment, Yi-Bei wasn't just lamenting about the changes in his body. In his heart, he was even more shocked by what he had seen and heard in a high-tier universe. This mechanical god came from a high-tier universe. In that universe, he was only one of the trillions of automaton soldiers, and he was only a defective product. There were countless powerful creatures in that universe. There was a sky-devouring beast that could devour the universe. There were the legendary angels. There were also true dragons and flood dragons. There was also the phoenix. A small portion of the information recorded had appeared in myths and legends in the history of human civilization. Of course, most of them were creatures that Yi-Bei had never seen or heard of before. A high-tier universe is so powerful. It seemed that even if it had evolved into a true dragon, it was only a part of it and could not be considered very strong. That's right. System, I have a question that has been bothering me for a long time. Yi-Bei hovered in the air, muttering to himself. What's the problem? The system replied. There are all kinds of strange creatures in the high-level universe. And you have your own thoughts, and you can even help me obtain all kinds of terrifying abilities. The most terrifying thing is that you can absorb and digest all the energy I devour, and then give some back to my body. Then, tell me, what level of life form are you? Yi-Bei's voice was very cold when he spoke. From the mechanical god's memories, he had obtained some terrifying information. That information seemed to have refreshed some of Yi-Bei's perceptions. At least there was one thing that Yi-Bei could be sure of. The system that had suddenly appeared in his mind was no coincidence. It was not even a coincidence that he had been framed from a human and then turned into a python. Even when humans had developed living plants. All of this was actually in the dark, as if there was a thread that was pulling everything together. Me? After a long while, the system slowly spat out this word. And this answer further confirmed some of Yi-Bei's conjectures. Right? You. What level of life form are you? Yi-Bei stopped being polite and continued to ask. After hesitating for a few seconds, the system replied decisively, end quote, Host, your current level is still too weak. You don't have the right to know. When you evolve into a true dragon, come and ask me again, end quote. All right. Yi-Bei didn't say anything else. Although he gradually did not have a good impression of the system. But there was one thing that couldn't be denied. If it wasn't for the system, he might still be an ordinary human being. In order to live, for the so-called wealth and women, he would constantly work hard. A short life of a few decades would pass by in a flash, and all his efforts would gradually turn into bubbles. He wouldn't bring it with him when he was born, and he wouldn't bring it with him when he died. Now that he had become a snake, with the help of the system, it had only been a few years. However, Yi-Bei believed that the things he had encountered over the past few years, the information and knowledge he had gained, and the things he had done, it was unknown how many times stronger they were than humans. At least, at this time, even if he, Yi-Bei really died in an accident. He would have no more regrets in this life. End quote. Host, you've now met the qualifications to evolve into a golden flood dragon. Would you like to start the evolution? End quote. The system's voice rang out again, just as Yi-Bei was pondering these questions. Of course I'm evolving. Yi-Bei nodded. At this moment, his body was surrounded by endless black holes, and no life could come over. This was undoubtedly the safest place. Moreover, although Yi-Bei had some doubts about the system, at least on the surface, it was still very useful, and it had been helping him evolve all this time. In terms of making him stronger, Yi-Bei really couldn't refuse. After the voice fell, in the next moment, in the endless black hole, Yi-Bei's body began to undergo a massive transformation. A massive amount of energy spread from Yi-Bei's body. If a creature evolved the same way, Yi-Bei could completely maintain his normal state. Crack, crack. Under the effect of the massive energy, Yi-Bei felt as if all the gene chains in his body were being reassembled. After devouring the mechanical god, the endless amount of metal kept on surging in from another universe of nothingness and was compressed to the extreme. Then, the metal gradually began to spread across Yi-Bei's body. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. This process was very fast. Less than 20 minutes had passed. Yi-Bei, who was floating in space, suddenly turned golden. His entire body seemed to be made of gold. But it was obvious that in Yi-Bei's current state, gold couldn't satisfy him at all. The metal on the surface of his body was many times harder than gold, and it looked completely indestructible and unbreakable. The Golden Flood Dragon. In the lower universes, there was no creature that could surpass him. Metal Star Field. At that moment, Yi-Bei was entrenched in the black hole, his eyes focused. This time, he felt that his strength had increased more than 1,000 times in an instant. If he were to face the Flood Dragon again with this body, Yi-Bei was completely confident that he could kill the Flood Dragon with a casual breath. If he were to encounter a creature of the same level as the mechanical god, Yi-Bei would be able to completely devour it in 10 minutes at most. But, just as Yi-Bei was reveling in the power of his body, the black hole around him expanded, and he quickly came back to his senses. End quote. System, the black hole's goal has always been to devour the energy around it. Now, the entire metal star field has become a huge black hole. At this rate, even if the crystal universe is not destroyed in the high-tier universe, it won't last long, right? Yi-Bei opened his mouth, and his voice was cold. Of course, if a smaller black hole has enough energy, it can easily fill it up and stop it from expanding. But this black hole is the size of a star field and keeps devouring everything around it. It won't take long for it to collapse this universe. However, you shouldn't be thinking about this right now. With your current strength, you can break through the limits of a low-tier universe at any time. The system replied. I got it. Yi-Bei nodded. Indeed, the moment he evolved into a golden flood dragon, Yi-Bei felt as if he had already known all the secrets of the universe. The universe. There was no so-called end. This was because he was a universe that could travel back and forth. To put it simply, it was like the round earth. When a living being kept walking in a straight line, it would eventually return to its starting point. It was the same for this low-level universe. In fact, every place was the end of this universe. Every place was also a starting point. In the end, it all depended on how one analyzed and judged it. End quote. Then, let's start making preparations to break through the universe barrier. End quote. Asterisk whoosh asterisk. Yi-Bei no longer hesitated. After saying this, his body moved slightly in the endless black hole. In the blink of an eye, he left the black hole and returned to the Centaur constellation as fast as he could. At the same time, Yi-Bei's mental power had already enveloped the entire universe. End quote. All snake civilization leaders, meet me on the three-body planet immediately. End quote. His spiritual power spread out. Yi-Bei's voice rang out in the minds of every living creature from the snake civilization, the so-called three-body planet. During this period of time, the snake tribe civilization had built a base on a three-bodied creature. Every time there was an important meeting, it would be held there, and this time was no exception. Originally, there were still many higher-ups of the snake tribe civilization who were expanding in other star systems. But when they heard Yi Bei's voice, almost all of them reacted at the same time and returned to the centaurs as quickly as they could. Yi Bei didn't say much this time. However, everyone knew that after defeating the mechanical god, something big was going to happen. It was very likely that he had found a way to break through the barrier of the universe. In the giant building, the apostles who had been staying in the centaurs had gathered together. The king won. This battle is crazy. The king completely destroyed the entire machinery race civilization with his own power. This universe is only so big, it can't contain it. Everyone, if I'm not wrong, this must be about a high-tier universe. It's just that we haven't found the edge of our universe yet. What a pity. Wang Wen flicked his tongue. After another few dozen days, his body looked even more powerful and refined. When he spoke, his voice also carried a terrifying aura. If he didn't restrain himself, his voice might be enough to shatter the void. Let's wait for the king to return first. The blood moon flapped its wings. He should be back soon. Speaking of which, after devouring such a huge machine race life form and the endless allspark, how much energy would he have to absorb? Logically speaking, the king should be undergoing a genetic evolution. However, according to my observations, it doesn't seem like it. Just wait. Buzz. Buzz. However, as soon as they finished speaking, a distorted space appeared in the center of the building. That space was constantly releasing terrifying energy. Suddenly, the entire building became extremely quiet. Everyone knew that it was definitely the king performing a space jump. Sure enough, a second later, a golden worm dragon emerged from the space. However, the flood dragon was only 3 meters long. The golden body became extremely dazzling under the light. The moment it appeared, it had a terrifying aura. It was the aura of a king. Even the apostles did not dare to breathe loudly when faced with this aura. King, king, king. After a long time, they respectfully called out, their hearts filled with endless fear. End quote. The automaton race has already failed. However, that wasn't the true automaton race. Even the automaton life form that I fought at the end was the same. He was only a defective product of the true automaton race. Everyone, in the high-tier universe, all of them are like that. Are you prepared? As soon as Yi Bei appeared, he didn't waste any time and immediately went straight to the point. The apostles wanted to report the results of the battle. In the end, when they heard Yi Bei's words, they were all stunned. The metal life form that was countless times bigger than Earth was actually a defective product and only a member of the automaton race. One had to know that the true machinery race was similar to the insect race. Their numbers were endless. If every life form of the machinery race was as terrifying as the machine god, no, even more terrifying than him, then wouldn't the snake race civilization be useless? Yi Bei's words were simply too shocking. At this moment, the apostles seemed to have unraveled the truth of the universe. However, they had unknowingly fallen into another terrifying place. A high-tier universe. What kind of place was that? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Could that be the real universe, the end where all the powerful creatures lived? However, no matter what, it was always right for living things to go higher. End quote. King, we're ready. No matter how powerful the creatures there are, that day will come. Even if I die, I'll be content to see that high-tier universe. End quote. Roar, roar. Golden Lion growled. Although he said that, his eyes were burning with flames and were full of light. The universe was very big. Even at this point, countless lives were still searching for it. The universe was truly endless and worthy of being explored by countless lives. Yi Bei was entrenched in the giant building. After all the apostles had reached an agreement, he continued, I found the end of this universe. His voice was very calm. What? However, his words caused Golden Lion, Caesar, and Morpheus to tremble. During this period of time, the Snake Tribe civilization had plundered endless resources and continued to expand in the universe. However, until now, they had not discovered the so-called end of the universe. If they didn't know about the existence of a high-level universe, these apostles might have firmly believed that this universe was the real universe. An endless universe had endless resources. Why would they need to jump out of here? In fact, indeed, there were many mutated beasts that thought the universe was endless. Only a few of the upper echelons of the snake tribe civilization knew that this world was far from simple. My king, does this universe really have an end? Morpheus was a little excited and took the initiative to speak. Recently, he had been closely monitoring the movements of all the snake civilization's armies. However, even though the army had been expanding wildly, they had not found any so-called end. The end of the universe. What's that? Caesar was curious. He had thought about it many times. What would it be like at the end of a universe? He couldn't figure out what was on the other side. And quote, the end of the universe is just a concept. Everyone, in fact, you have been mistaken from the beginning. End quote, Yibei said calmly. Now that he had already understood the knowledge, it was completely necessary to tell everyone. So, Yibei didn't hesitate any longer and immediately continued. Let's look at the problem in a different way. Everyone, you have all experienced the era of human civilization, right? Do you think that an ordinary human is strong enough? Yibei asked slowly. Ordinary human? That's just a low-level creature. It's a piece of trash. The golden lion showed disdain without hesitation. But when Yibei heard this, he shook his head slightly and said, then, golden lion, how many cells do you think there are in the human body? It's endless. It's impossible to calculate. Golden Lion paused for a moment before he started to get serious. Yibei continued, then, let's assume that every cell is a planet. Every piece of flesh represents a galaxy, and every organ represents a giant galaxy. What are humans? After Yibei said this, all the apostles and mutant beast executives were stunned. Their eyes widened. Their eyes were filled with shock. With their current thinking and intelligence, as long as Yibei pointed it out, they would immediately understand what he meant. The cells are constantly multiplying and then being destroyed. At the same time, cells aren't the smallest individual. In the cells, there are countless other elements, and those elements can be assumed to be living creatures on the planet. The current state of the snake civilization is clearly cancer cells. Morpheus' eyes were wide open. These words came out in one breath. However, after he said that, the giant building instantly became extremely quiet. The cancer cells. According to this understanding, didn't that mean that after some time, if the snake civilization continued to devour, the universe would definitely collapse? You can understand it that way, but it's not entirely correct. We might be very similar to cancer cells, but don't forget, we are living creatures. With our current biological level and adaptability, we can survive even in another universe. We won't die like cancer cells after losing their host. Yibei continued. Morpheus nodded in agreement with Yibei. End quote. Then, the edge of the universe means, end quote. At the same time, he continued, end quote. This universe might not have an edge at all. Those planets are always moving quietly and in a continuous cycle. At every moment, countless universes are annihilated and reborn. That's why there's an illusion of endless numbers. End quote. Right? This is also what I wanted to say. This universe of ours isn't endless in size. It can even be said that any location is the starting point and the ending point. Yibei said. When he said that, the leaders of the mutated beasts present could basically understand. Their understanding of this universe had also quietly reached a new height. King, then, what do we do next? After a long time, Caesar finally spoke. His voice was filled with curiosity. This universe was almost over. End quote. We don't have much time. During this last period, clean up all the resources in this universe. Put all the useful resources into the space debris. When everything is ready, I will personally open the universe barrier. End quote. Yes, we'll go and prepare now. End quote. I'll plunder all the resources here. I'll be more confident when I go to a high-tier universe. End quote. End quote. During this period of time, we have all been working hard to devour. The development of the snake civilization has almost reached its limit in this universe. It is imperative that we break through the barrier of the universe. End quote. Many of the snake civilization's higher-ups said one after another, even though they were already afraid of a high-tier universe. However, at the same time, all the mutated beasts were filled with anticipation for the high-tier universe. End quote. I'll give you 10 days. After 10 days, I'll open the universe barrier. At that time, everything will come to an end, and all the mutated beasts will enter that universe, end quote. Yi said. Yes, yes, yes. The eyes of the apostles and snake civilization's upper echelons flashed with excitement when they heard this. 10 days later, the fate of the snake tribe civilization would open a new chapter. At that time, read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Whether they would advance towards a more powerful and perfect civilization or be destroyed would depend on their actions. For now, you can go and prepare. Of course, there's something I have to remind everyone. Once the universe barrier opens, any living being, I don't care what excuse they have, must leave this place. Even if they die, they must die outside. When he said this, Yi-Bei's voice was a little cold. What he wanted was an army full of passion, endless battle, and endless plunder. He would rather have the creatures in front of him as food. In a high-tier universe, the sky was filled with boundless energy. The entire universe was filled with all kinds of energy. The energy mixed together and seemed to form a liquid that floated around. And in a ruin in a high-tier universe, countless huge machines were stirring and crushing the mixture. Those machines were made of the strongest green-purple gold in the high-tier universe. Its density and hardness were so high that even a level 20 life form could not leave a mark on it. Tap, 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 tap. The machine was crushing them madly. In front of him, there were many universe crystals. As the universe crystals entered its range of suppression, bang, bang. The moment the metal and the crystal collided, the crystal exploded like a bean. The machine repeated the process. As more and more crystal universes were destroyed, on the other side of the machine, brand new crystal universes were being created. The process repeated, and the machine seemed to be an artisan. Tap, 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 tap. In the void, in the universe, the sound of tapping could make living beings feel an unprecedented fear. As the machine continued to crush them, among them, one of the universe crystals' luster had become dim, as if its energy had been completely drained and would self-destruct at any moment. And that universe crystal was clearly the one where Yi-Bei and the mutated beasts were. Based on the speed at which the giant metal was crushing down, it would be Yi-Bei's turn in exactly 10 days. In the centaurs of the lower universe, all the creatures of the snake tribe civilization, from the previous crazy expansion to the current collection of resources and retreat, were all carried out in an orderly manner. Although the creatures of the snake tribe civilization had reached an extremely large level, they were still very orderly. This was the importance of civilization. These creatures were not only powerful, but they also had extraordinary wisdom. In the giant building, and NBSB, whoosh. Yi-Bei's mental power had completely enveloped the entire universe. When he saw the snake civilization creatures retreating, his gaze became more and more profound. This was because he could clearly see that the universe was dimming. At the same time, there seemed to be layers of extremely terrifying and violent energy filling the surroundings of the universe. The energy seemed to be on the verge of charging into the universe at any moment. We really don't have much time. It seems that this universe will completely collapse soon. We have to speed up. Yi-Bei sat cross-legged. The expansion of the spiritual energy domain. In the next moment, a distorted space was rapidly forming in the sky above the huge building. The air was like a black hole, and a terrifying aura was frantically leaking out of it like a funnel. As time passed, the vortex grew larger and larger. One could even clearly feel that some powerful energy was emerging from it and was being instilled into this universe. Yes, Yi-Bei was the one who had created this vortex. The thickness of the universe barrier was very big. In fact, Yi-Bei didn't really want to wait for 10 days. He only wanted to break through the barrier in 10 days. As the edge of the barrier grew thinner and thinner, Yi-Bei could even sense powerful energy flowing in from a high-level universe. And quote, I still have to wait 10 days. I'll have to see what the snake civilization is like during this time. End quote. Yi-Bei muttered to himself. Waiting was no doubt boring. When his majestic mind power began to transform the universe, his mind power domain also spread out and enveloped all the living creatures of the snake tribe civilization. The first one was to invade the ant tribe. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it, but when he did, even Yi-Bei was shocked. End quote. I can't believe the ant tribe has grown so powerful. I'm afraid their numbers have already reached 100 trillion, end quote. Bei scanned the area with his mental power domain, and to his shock, he discovered that one of the star systems was densely packed with mutated ants. Moreover, the ants were all different. Some of them were huge and black in color, as if they could destroy anything. Some ants were blood red and had poisonous stingers on their abdomens. It was as if any living creature would be immediately poisoned to death once they were stabbed. End quote. Ants are insects. Back in the days of human civilization, they were creatures that reproduced very quickly. In this era, they obviously have an advantage, end quote. Bei continued. The next moment, his mental power domain shifted to the hamster tribe. What? When he saw the hamster tribe's situation, Bei's body froze again. It was also a different star field. In the star field, there were huge planets everywhere. On the surface, those planets seemed very peaceful. However, when Bei's mental power domain casually covered an entire planet, he was truly shocked. The planet was densely covered with caves. Even the entire planet had been completely hollowed out from the middle. Countless mutated rats were shuttling back and forth, clearly dividing up their work. Furthermore, each of the rats was extremely large, and they could move freely in the void. As they traveled, they continuously absorbed the planet's energy and used it as nutrients for their evolution. In the end, they reproduced again. Furthermore, there were also many mutated rats in that star domain. Bei only had to do a simple check to discover that there were more than 90 trillion of them. If this continued, the power of the rat tribe would faintly surpass that of the ant tribe. In the future, they might even become one of the most powerful forces in the snake tribe civilization. One should know that with the current strength of the mutated rats, any one of them could easily devour an entire planet. There was no limit to evolution. Just thinking about how powerful he would become in the future was shocking. He finished reading the ant tribe and the rat tribe. Bei directed his mental power to the snake tribe's side. Bei had started out as a snake and evolved step by step. Although he had now become a flood dragon and even had the possibility of evolving into a true dragon, he still had a special feeling for snakes. Even the current civilization was called the snake civilization. When he scanned the area with his mental power domain and saw the current situation of the snake tribe civilization, he was a little surprised. It was a vast star field. In that star domain, countless huge snakes lay in the starry sky. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Some occupied it. Some were wandering in the starry sky. If the background was in the star field, this scene would look extremely shocking. Moreover, the strength of each of those snakes now surpassed that of the space snakes. Any one of them could easily blow up a planet. The snake clan was also developing quite well. Even if there weren't many of them, they were still among the top few in the entire civilization. There was a lot of time, so Bei wasn't in a hurry. His spiritual power domain scanned and patrolled different creatures. However, when Bei finally extended his mental power domain to humans, it was a different situation. There were very few humans now. All of them lived in the space fragment where Earth was. Moreover, the place where they lived was only a city on the planet. At the same time, the other parts of the planet had basically been occupied by other creatures of the snake tribe civilization. The total number of humans had recently made some progress and reached 1 million. With the emergence of the evolution potion, the surviving humans had all gained great benefits. In terms of lifespan, it had increased to at least 300 years. Their individual combat power had also doubled. Some humans who had evolved to a deeper level could even fly in the air. It was as if they had returned to the legendary mythological era. End quote. These humans are really tenacious. However, it's useless. They have too many limitations in terms of genes and have been left far behind by other creatures. They don't have much value. End quote. Bei said calmly after observing for a few seconds. In fact, he had already discovered that the millions of humans who were still alive were now regarded as rare creatures. The other races that also lived on Earth. Basically, when they were bored, they would use some special means to observe the living conditions of these humans. Some humans, who ate in large mouthfuls, could attract the attention of other creatures. Some humans were mating. They were also recorded by the other creatures. Moreover, Due to some of the terrible behavior of humans in the past, their status in the snake civilization had become very strange. Most creatures did not have a good impression of humans when they observed them. If it wasn't for the strict rules set by the snake civilization, which prohibited creatures of the same race from killing each other, there probably wouldn't be a single human left. While Yi Bei was observing, he also heard a lot of interesting discussions. For example, a mutated monkey, who was more senior, was in a room. In front of him was a 3D projection of a human being. He was teaching a young monkey with a serious expression. These creatures once dominated an era. It's a pity that they're too full of themselves. They think that the whole world belongs to them, that all extraterrestrial creatures should be the same as them. This kind of thinking was very terrifying. They were destined to be unable to develop. Not only that, but they were also disloyal. In the beginning, they were the most powerful party in the snake civilization. But now they're almost extinct. The senior mutated monkey said seriously. And quote, "But they look really strange. Why don't they have tails?" The little monkey nodded, but when it said this, it was very confused. End quote. Yes, they are indeed a little strange. Not only do they not have tails, but they also don't have any hair on their bodies. In winter, they have to wrap themselves in a thick layer. Otherwise, they will probably freeze to death. End quote. End quote. What pitiful creatures. It's hard to believe that they were able to rule a planet back then. End quote. Anyway, remember this. You can't learn from this kind of inferior creature. Conversations like this were happening all the time. After hearing this, Yi Bei was rendered speechless for a moment. That's right, humans are indeed very strange in many ways. They seem to always live in their own world and feel that the world should revolve around them. They had never thought about it carefully, whether their self-righteous thoughts were logical or not. Humans, let's just leave it at that for now. It doesn't matter even if we go extinct. After a long time, Yi Bei finally spoke, his voice cold. After saying this, Walala. He could clearly feel that at this moment, endless resources and creatures in this universe were beginning to gather in the centaurs. On the surface of those three-body life forms, there were countless creatures of the snake tribe civilization gathered on each one. At the same time, the news that Yi Bei was about to open the high-level universe barrier and enter a whole new universe was already known to all the creatures from the snake tribe civilization. Moreover, the results of this had surprised Yi Bei. None of the creatures from the snake tribe stayed in this low-tier universe after they found out about this. Without exception, all the creatures of the snake race civilization were full of anticipation for the future of the high-tier universe. In fact, such greetings could be heard everywhere in the universe. Hey, did you hear? In a few more days, we will be able to enter a high-tier universe. End quote. Yes, in the high-tier universe, I don't know how strong the creatures there are, but one thing is for sure, the creatures there are definitely delicious. Even if I die, I will devour some. If I can become stronger, everything else doesn't matter anymore. End quote. End quote. This low-tier universe is useless. It's necessary to go higher. End quote. End quote. To be honest, our snake civilization has changed a lot recently. If it was in the past, I would never believe that we could have what we have today. End quote. That's right. This is all the king's credit. End quote. A high-tier universe. I'm really looking forward to it. End quote. The creatures gathered in the centaurs were frantically sorting out the resources while they discussed. Through his mental power domain, Yi Bei could clearly hear all of these voices. End quote. Now, the snake civilization is basically united as one. This is also the most powerful time of the snake civilization. I wonder how much of a shock the appearance of the snake civilization will cause in the high-tier universe. End quote. Yi Bei muttered to himself. He couldn't help but look forward to the future even more. As he looked at the universe barrier on the giant building that was constantly thinning, he even wanted to gather all the creatures of the snake civilization together and break through this barrier. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. During this time, all the snake tribe creatures were retreating to the centaurs. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. As the number of people increased, the huge centaurs seemed to be very crowded. Even the void was filled with all kinds of battleships. They were so densely packed that there were countless of them. However, When these creatures arrived at the centaurs, they became extremely quiet. They didn't dare to make a single sound, as if they were afraid of disturbing Yibei. The ninth day, the creatures of the snake civilization had basically all retreated. Above the giant building, the universe barrier was getting thinner and thinner. There was even a visible energy fluctuation that was being transmitted toward the gap in the barrier, toward this lower universe, the space fragment, Earth, and the Human Federation. On the ninth day, all the humans had gathered around the Federation, regardless of gender or age. However, while all the other creatures had unprecedented expectations for the new universe, humans were not. In the Human Federation, a meeting was held by the higher-ups of the human race. The meeting this time was held without Guyu's knowledge. Furthermore, the meeting was held in a sealed memory metal space. The metal in this space could eliminate spiritual energy. In this sealed space, even Yibei couldn't see what was going on inside. At this moment, there were a total of 7 people in this secret chamber. Basically, they were all the leaders of a country during the era of human civilization. End quote. The snake civilization is about to leave this universe and advance to a higher universe. Everyone, this is really humanity's last chance. Now, our human population has grown to millions, and we are gradually getting stronger. At this rate, it will take at most 3 years to recover to 100 million. In 5 years, we will be able to regain the prosperity of human civilization. End quote. The former leader of the island nation stood up. It had not been easy for him to live from the time of human civilization until now, but the more he saw the snake tribe's civilization develop and become stronger, the more unwilling he was. So, what do you mean? At the side, the former United Kingdom Prime Minister spoke, deliberately pretending not to understand. And quote, "What I mean is simple. We only have 10 days this time. If we retreat in a hurry, the snake civilization can't possibly take all the resources with us. Furthermore, the entire snake civilization has already gathered a large amount of resources in the centaurs. This is the best opportunity. When we go to the high-tier universe, we choose to stay and work hard to develop the human civilization in this universe. With those resources, we can continue to develop. It will be very fast." The Japanese Prime Minister continued. After he said this, the atmosphere in the secret room became silent. It had to be said that the Japanese Prime Minister's words had touched the hearts of these people. End quote. "We can do that, but don't forget. The king said that all living creatures must retreat. If they want to stay, they must be prepared to be turned into food. We humans already have a very low status in the snake civilization. If we cause trouble again this time, I'm afraid that humans will really go extinct." End quote. After a long while, the former leader of China spoke. His voice was solemn, and his eyes were full of worry. He didn't want to cause any more trouble, but he couldn't do it without him. As soon as he said this, the eyes of all the other human leaders in the secret chamber flashed with fear. Yibei was too powerful. His strength had unknowingly planted a seed in the hearts of all living beings. Every time he was mentioned, countless creatures would feel fear. Yes, the king did say that. That's why we have to gamble. If we win, the human race will rise again. If we lose, the human race will be destroyed. At least, I think that since we're living like pets to other creatures, we might as well take a gamble. The former Prime Minister of Japan was persistent. When he said this, his eyes were staring fiercely. "We can't fail again." The former great emperor spoke. "Then, what should we do? We can pretend to let a group of humans follow the snake race into the high-tier universe, and then we will leave a group behind and place them in a sealed memory metal. After they leave, this universe will naturally belong to us humans. At that time, we can expand and develop as we wish. This should be doable, right?" The golden-haired president said. He was once the most powerful existence in human civilization. However, the snake civilization had risen so quickly after he had gained that power. The golden-haired president was definitely the one who was the most unwilling to accept this. "It can indeed be done. End quote. There's no problem with this. But I'm afraid there might be an accident." End quote. End quote. Whatever. It's the last gamble. Only by staying in this universe can humanity have a real future. End quote. End quote. We don't need many people to stay, just less than 100. As long as we master the genetic technology and reproduce, The number will skyrocket one day. End quote. 100 people? I agree. All right. In the end, the higher-ups of the human race gathered together and came up with a plan. They had decided to leave 100 humans in this universe. When the snake civilization had completely retreated, they would come out of the memory metal and build a new human civilization in the ruins of this universe. The final decision was made. Before they left, the high-ranking human officials went to look for their most trusted subordinates one after another to formulate a wall-facing plan. They did all of this without Guyu knowing. Time was running out. In the Centaur constellation, the tense atmosphere began to spread rapidly. All the creatures were making their final preparations to enter the higher universe. The apostles also began to gather in the giant building surrounding Yibei. End quote. King, the ant tribe is ready. All the mutated ants have arrived at the Centaur's constellation. They have transformed into their smallest form and can enter the high-tier universe at any time. End quote. The queen ant stood in front of Yibei and spoke very respectfully. End quote. Your Majesty, the snake creatures are all ready. No one is missing. As long as you give the order, all the snake creatures will enter the high-tier universe as fast as possible. End quote. Wang Wen flicked his tongue and was full of confidence. Our monkey clan is also fully prepared. Caesar said. The apostles and leaders of the various races reported to each other. Meanwhile, Yibei sat inside and listened quietly. His mental power domain spread throughout the entire universe. Although the apostles had sworn that they wouldn't miss out on any living creatures, Yibei still discovered quite a few. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. However, there were not many of them. Yibei couldn't be bothered to care. Yibei didn't ask all living creatures to leave this universe just to show off his power. Instead, he knew very well that once the universe barrier opened, this low-level universe, as a crystal universe, would definitely not be able to withstand the energy storm that came from a high-level universe. The moment it opened, it would mean that this universe would be completely destroyed. End quote. That's good enough. There are less than 9 hours before the universe barrier is broken. End quote. After a long time, Yibei finally spoke in a low voice.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.